this beta bite, we're taking a look at how high-resolution images can be used with generative fill to create new compositions from old masterpieces. The Mona Lisa, probably the most significant painting of all time, has been shrouded in mystery. What is the background? Is she smiling? Where are her eyes looking? AI gives us a new interpretation, taking that old photo and passing it through neural restoration filters as well as generative fill filters to create a new composition for a new generation. So let's take a look at how I modified the classic Mona Lisa to come up with something new in the age of AI.
So we're going to take the Mona Lisa open source image. If we go into Wikipedia, click on the image here. So if we go into the Leonardo da Vinci and then we go to the download button, we can download the original file. We can download variants of it. We'll go ahead and download the full resolution image file. You can see it's almost 100 megabytes. So let's go ahead and open it inside of Photoshop Beta. Let's go ahead and check some image properties before we get started. So we'll uncheck this layer, unlock this layer, and Control-Alt-I for image. And you'll see that we have a 72 dpi image. Let's raise that to 300 and reduce the size by 1/3. So you'll see we get a high resolution photo, and then we resized it down to sample the higher resolution more accurately. So let's go and try this. All right, so now at full resolution on 4K, this image is about 8 by 12. And we can see the texture pretty clearly. We'll set the zoom size to 200 to see it a little bit more clearly. But we have a lot of crackling. There's a loss of detail in many of the aspects of the hair and over the eyes. Generally, we have a very kind of abstract background that's been debated for centuries of where that background or what that background actually is. And you'll notice that on the darker part of the garments, the paint is so oxidized that it really has lost all of the original color in some of these areas. And we see a high loss of color along these burnished sides too. So it'll be interesting to see how AI sees this image, right? So we have a couple different things that we can use to process this picture first. And the first one that we're going to do is to restore it using the neural net filter. So let's go into our filters, neural filters. So first off, you can see it recognized that there's a face in this portrait. And the second thing that we have to realize is that this is a picture of a painting. So there are some discrepancies about how that will actually transpose into a restored or a generative fill using these neural filters. But let's see how it works. And I think it's quite amazing. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to apply this new photo resolution filter. So first I have to download it, and you'll see the photo resolution is still in beta. But it's designed to take old photos that have been taken pictures of, digital pictures of old photos or paintings, and restore them. So let's reduce our scratches significantly. Let's enhance it almost entirely. And we'll bring up the face enhancements. We'll reduce noise and color noise a little bit. And reduce JPEG artifacts. Basically just smoothing out the images, the parts of the image that might be broken up, or artifacts that are inserted from compression processes. Right now, it's processing this on device. It's going to take approximately 2 minutes. Oh, 7 minutes now. 12 minutes now. But this is on an RTX 2060. So I'm running a Lenovo tablet PC, which has 2 integrated GPUs in it. But then I'm running an external GPU, which is running Photoshop on a an RTX 2060. So this is a pretty low-end graphics card. And on my 4070 or 4090 PCs, this processes about a third of the time that I usually expect it to run on this computer. So we're going to let this run. We're going to see what it actually does. And now you'll have to come back 2 or 3 times and keep doing this to see what the results are. But for now, I'm going to let it run, and then we'll jump back in when it's done. And so there we have it, another interpretation by AI of what the Mona Lisa would look like when it's restored. And the photo restoration filter, if we're going to zoom in on the face and background here, so this is at 700%. Let's back it down to 400. All right. So we can see in the face most of the cracking and distortion and aging have been replaced by smoother shadows and highlights. There's practically resurfacing in all the eyes, and there's interpretation that these eyes are a golden brown color. We still don't have a distinctive pupil in there. And this is the photo restoration filter, so this is not giving you options like Generative Fill Filter does. So if we move over to the background, we'll see the cracking is still apparent. And if we toggle the original, we can see just how much was changed. So her face, it certainly restores a lot of what we could interpret in this final image as features that may or may not be there. There's so much loss due to the cracking and aging that to actually get the nuances back would be probably impossible. So we can see with the Photoshop photo restoration filter that we get a clear face brought back to life after hundreds of years. And in the body, we still have significant cracking. If we turn the layer off, we can see that it's significantly reduced, but it's still highly present. Obviously, if she had that type of skin, she'd have a pretty serious skin disease to take care of. So let's go and look at how we can extend the background to give us some sort of additional context to see what the computer might put together for us. So first, I'm just going to go over and select my crop. And I'm going to extend this image by a few inches. Let's put it 1/3 there. And once I do that, I'll go over to my marquee tool and I will select, well, my marquee tool has problems on this Photoshop for some reason. So it does not like me doing that. So I'm actually going to have to draw it with my pen. This is a tablet after all. Alright, so once we have that selected, we'll go ahead and push the generative fill button, and we'll leave it blank and it'll fill it in with the best of its approximation. And if you've used content aware fill, this feature is very similar to content aware fill when you don't put any description into the generate box. Okay, so that is a it's hard to argue with that interpretation. There's not many features in the background of the Mona Lisa that aren't obscured some way, either blurred or twisted or just cracked from age. So we get three options. These are the three options over here. And if we push generate, we'll get three more. So the second one looks kind of nice too. And the third one looks somewhat realistic as well. It's hard to say they don't look realistic because we don't know what's going to be on that side. I'm going to use the first one, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the left-hand side. I think that's about the same size. I'm going to draw my marquee. And I'm doing it just overlapping a couple pixels of the image. And you can see it's working pretty quickly. I mean, I'm not waiting minutes, I'm waiting seconds for it to come up with ideas. And the left-hand side is evidently more chaotic than the right-hand side. And the compositions are a lot less structured, although this one looks fairly well structured. I'm going to push the generate button again to get some more options. And obviously if something matches the right side that we generated, we're going to come in and actually replace all of the background in a few minutes, but for now we're extending it. Okay, so that's the first time I saw anything with water in it, or what looks like water. Who knows what it actually is. This looks like a watercolor. And you know what? I think that'll do it for me. Yeah, I'm going to leave it with this one. Alright, so now that we have our two generative fill layers, and you'll notice when I click back on the layer, it's non-destructive. So I can either take the layers off, or when I go into the layer, I can choose a different variation to apply. So it makes life a lot easier, right? So now that we did that, and it's looks like a restored photo, maybe even expanded. It's hard to say, obviously. This is a new interpretation of the Mona Lisa as seen by computers, taking kind of the essence of what it's learned from humanity and how we compose images and saying, okay, this is what this person probably looks like. And I think it gives us a new depth into interpreting classical art like this, as many people have already repainted the Mona Lisa themselves to say this is their interpretation. We're now looking at a kind of collective interpretation of what this might look like in reality, and I think that's pretty cool stuff. So next, let's go ahead and merge all these layers. I'm going to hit Control Shift Alt E, and I get a new flattened layer up top. And now I am going to select the subject and remove the background. So first I'm going to use the Select Subject tool, and it did a pretty good job. Yeah, I'm going to leave it like that. I can see up here. I'm going to select some of these more dispersed hairs as the final line over here. And I'm just using the magic selection tool and quick keys. Alt for taking off, and well, you don't need anything for adding to the mask. So anytime you see the little negative cursor there, it's just pushing Alt. And if I push Q, I get a quick look at the mask. And I think that looks pretty good for right now. So what I'm going to do is select the inverse. And now basically I have the background selected. And for generative fill, I'm going to put a background in there. I'm going to say a space nebula. So let's see what it comes up with. I'm just going to play around with some things to replace it with, and we'll go ahead and see which one looks the best and pick that one. I think the fun part of this is that there are no wrong answers, so everything that we're doing is kind of for the first time. This kind of gives us that ethereal kind of Mona Lisa as God-like look. That one just didn't work. That one actually looks kind of cool. And you can see it's starting to structure the colors to come and blend with the image itself. So let's go ahead and try something else. Pristine mountain scape oil painting classic. Say neoclassical style. I do like these space compositions though. They do show something that I've never thought about doing with her, and the way that she looks situated in the nebula gives her an ethereal look. So this is interesting. Okay, so we put it on a mountain backdrop. Well, that's even more interesting. It is somewhat interesting. Now what happens if I just push generate and don't replace anything with any text? Kind of interested to see what this is actually going to do. I think it could do something really funky or it could do something really cool. We never really know. So I think that leads into something good to talk about AI right now, is that, wow, that is a neat looking composition. See, we had no idea that it was going to do something like that. It looks like it's probably inside of a tavern. There seems to be a table here with a woman's hand and a blouse and some sort of lantern. Seems to be a figure here. Oh, it's just kind of eerie looking. Oh, that's pretty. Giving her a halo in a certainly a unique interpretation, and basically just watercoloring out the background. And that I'm not really. Oh, that's kind of fun. I guess she was supposed to be in the lake or in the water. All right, so we've shown that you can replace the background and it takes it as an entirely new composition, right? So let's go ahead and see what happens if we selectively change the background. So let's go ahead and I am going to go in here and trace with my trusty pen an area of the background. Alright, so we got one side selected, and basically I want to put in a mountain. Now, what do you think the difference here is going to be? I've selected a smaller sample with the rest of the background and some of it partially image generated already. So we have multiple different effects being compiled to create a new intrinsic effect that's applied. And here we go, we got some options. Let's take a look at our second one. There's even a little bird in it. But we see what the difference is now. Instead of taking something that's kind of abstract and completely working the image into a new composition, when we select just a partial part of the background and use Generative Fill to replace it, it takes the entire context of the image into effect and tries to replicate something that might fit into that background. So even though I'm describing something that I want, when I describe it replacing the entire background, it generates one thing. When I just describe it, and I'm only looking at a small subset of the background, it's going to generate something much closer to the original theme of or inspiration of the composition. So let's go ahead and do this a couple more times and create a unique composition of the Mona Lisa that we can use for our own art. So I'm going to go ahead and just go and select several sections of the background again and do the same thing. So if I ask it to do a sunset, it gives me some pretty unique options here. And I actually like number 2 the best. And I'm particularly interested in this edge right here. And if we pay attention, we can see it generates some hair, even gives it some mess. I might say that that side of the composition is a little bit more dynamic. And I think we get another bird. Yeah, we get another bird. There's another bird up there. So now we've taken the original Mona Lisa composition and created something totally new. This new composition is entirely influenced by all of humanity's painting and compositions and photos and in art. And I think that that's pretty neat. It gives us a new look into something old. So I hope you enjoyed reviving the Mona Lisa with Photoshop Beta on this episode of Beta Bytes, and I hope to see you for many, many more. Thanks again. I'm JD at Discourse Digital.